So, Fáilte Jack, welcome to the Lagan Stream podcast. I'm Martin O'Well of the Belfast Media Group, and today I'm joined by Hugh Cormican, Dr. Hugh Cormican, who's the CEO of Cirdan. Hugh is a Newry man, relocated to
Belfast man originally. I was
Belfast.
a Belfast man. My formative years were Newry.
Okay, but was born again in the environs of Belfast, and very committed to the city. He's going to be addressing our next small business roundtable in An Chultúrlann on the 25th of March, which is a series of business breakfasts we run as networking opportunities for small businesses in West Belfast. He has a doctorate in physics from Queen's, from QUB. I also went there. I have a degree in anthropology, which is really not the same currency, but there you go. He was involved in the establishment of Andor right from his studies as a PhD student, and Andor was founded in '89. Located in West Belfast at the Peace Line, which was very helpful, I think, to messaging about the emerging peace process. And then in 2004, I think, 2004, did it go public? Hugh, was it that early?
Yeah, in 2004, yeah.
Listed in 2004, which not a lot of companies in this part of the world did then or do now. Andor was a manufacturer of what I call cameras, digital cameras, before anyone talked about digital cameras, for research, and it very much prospered. They're still there, not under local leadership, unfortunately, because I think it makes quite a difference when companies are owned locally and not owned locally. In 2010, not having had enough of the startup world, he decided to scale the startup mountain once again and establish Cirdan. And this time, he picked a location which is even more beautiful than the Andor location at the foot of the Black Mountain. He's right on the Lagan Canal at Lambeg and the old Coca-Cola plant. Pleased to say that Cirdan continues to grow, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but recently secured another round of investment, which included $5 million, I think, from our friends in the New York State Retirees Fund, which is run by our dear friend Tom DiNapoli, the Comptroller of New York State. So, Hugh, welcome to the Lagan Stream podcast on this bright spring morning. Before we get to Cirdan, in terms of leadership style, because you have a very interesting leadership style, if you were to ask to place yourself between Elon Musk at one side of the scale and the Dalai Lama at the other, where would your leadership scale, where would it fit in there?
I think they're very hard to compare those comparisons. I think that having a long-term view in life and having an appreciation and taking a different perspective on how the world works is definitely an important part of a leader's role, to be able to provide this sort of innovation and look to try and achieve that sustainable competitive advantage that you need to have a business to succeed. I think, though, as a business, it helps to be calmer, but occasionally there is an advantage of being very unpredictable. Unfortunately, I think some of the leadership in the US at the moment, where they think being unpredictable 90% of the time is a good idea, that's the wrong idea. You want to be less than 10% of the time unpredictable.
And so there are clearly good traits in both. This drive to succeed, because I view you as a mellow person, but you obviously have a great drive to succeed, or you wouldn't be swimming.
You haven't seen me backed into a corner. That's when you're more likely to use your ability to get your way.
So you have the ability, but I mean, what type of manager are you then? I mean, do you delegate a lot? Do you say to people that we expect, to be everybody to be their own boss, or not?
Well, yeah, I like everybody to be their own boss, and I want people to rise to the occasion. I would like to feel that's the kind of manager I am. Now, the reality is, you never achieve in your own mind what you actually think you are, and so the question's better asked to my staff, not to me, as to what kind of leader I am. But I certainly would like them to step up and understand the perspective of where we're looking at, and work for themselves how they can help create that sustainable advantage, which is the core to every business.
So some of the small businesses that come to our business breakfasts, they're very small. One was a gym, O'Neill's Gymnastics, and they said at the last break, we've employed our first person. And you're growing, so you're employing a lot of people and be employing more. But is attitude as important or more important to you, or values as important or more important to you than really their skills or their knowledge? Or where does attitude in your view come in the Cirdan?
Yeah, like I say, I think it helps to have a positive outlook on life. It's difficult if you're not going to have a positive outlook. I do feel that you do need to have structured, strong values. A lot of business people think that get into business for the wrong reason. And it's quite often where businesses lose their way. The businesses focus on what they do and how they do it, but not why they do it. And I think as a business, first thing you need to be sure in your own self is why you're doing this. And usually the people who are most, like say, mercenary don't succeed. It's people who want to make a real difference in the world. The mercenary and the money comes afterwards. It's really what you can do for that. And so I'd always encourage people to think about why they're doing this first and foremost.
So why are you doing Cirdan?
We want to make a big difference to the world in terms of diagnostics. We have see that we have knowledge and skills that can apply to help improve the diagnosis and decrease the time it takes to get to diagnosis and improve the outcome for patients. And we want to be able to provide that and support that. So work with clinicians and work with the patients. But really, it's about making their lives better, and that's when Cirdan and Andor are both for the photonics industry. As a physicist, it's about light and measuring light and cameras. Sort of Andor was lovely as a researcher. We did a lot of work for other researchers developing leading edge cameras, but I really wanted to get into how we can improve people's lives, and that's really into the healthcare and medical diagnostics industry. And that really then was the reason why I left Cirdan left Andor and really formed Cirdan was we really wanted to make that difference. And we could see how that technology was being used in research, but wasn't being used in medical areas, and how we could bring that to bear to make that happen.
And what you're diagnosing, your diagnosis relates to cancers, not to a gammy knee or a sore shoulder. I mean, this
well, it's wider than that. I mean, obviously, cancer diagnosis, and we focus a lot on specimen imaging. Looking at tissue samples or biopsies or tissue that's removed from an excision or a surgery. But I mean, it's wider than cancer. I mean, cancer would be a major part of it, but by no means the most of it. We also help support and look and find patients who are having problems in their long-term healthcare, monitoring of patients, and I think people don't get pay enough attention to looking longitudinally at their health and how their health develops. In terms of blood tests and going to the doctor and getting at least a blood test once a year, and those are things then they can start to spot. The sooner you can spot where somebody is starting to come off the guardrails or go outside the norms, the easier it is to correct it, and the better for the patient, it's better for the healthcare system because it's lower cost. I mean, if somebody gets gets very sick and appears up in A&E, that becomes a very expensive proposition to the healthcare system, and it's a very bad outcome for the patient. But if you can identify those problems earlier, the better. That's a key interest. And then there's sort of like chronic diseases like people with coagulation, blood problems, or diabetes that we really want to help those as well. It's not a matter just of people with cancers, but cancers is probably about half of what we do.
And is this just theory? Because like if you were creating stents, or manufacturing stents, you go to the RVH and see somebody coming in and coming out with 3 new stents in their heart or whatever. But do you see this in evidence? Like, do you meet doctors who say, or clinicians who say, well, look, I used your software and your hardware, and actually it helped me detect this chronic disease in my patient? Or is it just you work on the theory and presume that all this is happening?
No, well, we do actually talk to doctors about that, and quite often what it is, it speeds up that diagnosis, which is a critical part of it, so it can help determine those things faster, quicker. And so you're actually, and doctors like, this is great, you're making my job, I can do my job now half the time, or more importantly, what happens is it means they can do twice as much work in the day that they had done before. And that's important to us to help that, and it helps provide additional tooling and additional oversight to make their job easier, that they can be more confident. Because one of the things actually that surprised me, I spend a lot of time when I talk to doctors and pathologists, and surprisingly, one of the things you ask, I always would ask dumbass questions, and this is where we got into this whole idea of imaging. You ask the pathologist what's the most important tool you have, and they say their eyes, because they look down a microscope, or they look at results, or they look at, and then you realize, well, do you take many pictures? And no, they don't. And then, well, that's a problem, because if you redact that, if you describe in words what you see, it's a redaction of the information. It's not the complete information. So capturing that image is a key part of what we do. So looking at those images and providing more insight into those images and looking for features that may be not obvious initially helps the clinician to see things that from a different perspective, that helps them make their diagnosis faster and better. So that's a key part of what we try and achieve.
And did you think when you would go back to start up another business that you would stay in the healthcare space, or would you be interested? Were you interested in taking the management skills you have and the leadership skills you have and the business skills and going to a completely new area, or was it for you that you want to stay in that space because it makes a difference?
When I came out of Andor, which was very much focused in the research industry and universities, government labs, and leading edge academic research, when Cirdan was always created with the view that we wanted to help the health industry and improve the diagnostics and through the imaging support technology we had. So it was very much Cirdan's about health.
Okay, but for your journey with Cirdan now, what did you learn in Andor, which you brought with you? Was it knowledge about the healthcare industry, or was it management skills and leadership skills and business skills? Or what did you bring with you?
Well, I obviously, I was able to bring my experience in business, but I was actually in Andor when I first really came across the opportunity to understand about the imaging requirements of the diagnostic industry in pathology. And that's where then I was keen to move into that space. But it was clear it'd be difficult to turn Andor around to focus in that industry. So that's why left and set up Cirdan. I actually did a sort of a sabbatical, or an apprenticeship with a company out in Tucson, Arizona, very much focused on the sort of health imaging market, more on the radiology side. And that was a great opportunity to understand the business and go talk to people. And there's a lot more open doors in the US. It's very easy to do business in some respects because they're very open, and you get a lot of access there, which is sometimes very difficult here in sort of Northern Ireland and the wider UK. So it was an opportunity to really get to understand where the opportunities were and how we could start to move to try and exploit those and develop for those.
So where is Cirdan now? Many employees. What sort of turnover does Cirdan have, and where's it going to be in 5 years' time?
Well, we're on the cusp of a considerable growth curve. We're about 125 staff and employing just on a run rate of about £10 million, turnover. And then, by the way, 57 stars invested £5 million.
Wow. Okay.
So it was 5 million sterling from them and 2.5 million sterling from Clarendon and their new fund, the investment fund in Ireland. So the 7.5 million in the last round. But so we're looking to grow that business and basically tenfold in the next 5 years.
Okay, well, look, that's fantastic. Tell me some other pointers that might be useful for some of the people who go to our small business breakfast in terms of opportunity. It can't be easy to run a business which is manufacturing and you're making software, which is unusual here. But is there any evidence at all that things have got better for manufacturers under the Brexit deal? We're supposed to have the best of both worlds for manufacturers, not for people selling services. Is there any evidence that that's having a positive effect, that you can now export seamlessly to Britain and you can export to the EU seamlessly, but probably not if your big market is the US? Does it make any difference at all?
Well, our big market, we have a significant part of our market is actually after UK and Ireland is really Australia, and then after that would be Europe and then the US. Certainly it takes away and it stops the barriers that were put up by Brexit for UK companies. I don't think it helps us anymore. It
Yeah.
just doesn't put up the barriers that they suffer in England. And people don't realize that as an English company trying to export into Europe, that they have requirements on them for export documentation and compliance, which is more onerous than they would if they were part of the EU. And whereas we don't have those additional barriers, so I wouldn't say it made it easier, but it did make it. If it'd been part of in England and Scotland and Wales, it would have been harder, definitely. So we're glad that that's not the case. And certainly, there's always a value in high value manufacturing. We manufacture products which are medical devices. They have to be built with certain requirements and a quality assurance scheme and sort of checks and balances. And that's not something that every company can do. And if you're looking for a business, you want to create that sustainable competitive advantage. It's important to understand, that you're better being in a market where there's not many competitors. It's rare to have competitors. If everybody was doing it, it would be much more difficult to compete. And you also need to understand that you don't want to make imitable. You don't want to make it too easy to be copied. And then you've got, creating real value for your customer. And if you're doing that, then you're creating real sustainable competitive advantage is what you need to be able to grow your business. We would like to make and improve the world, but we also have to grow in the world, and we have to feed that. We can sell product to be able to generate the revenues, to feed into the salaries, to generate the R&D, to improve the products further. And so you have to create this virtuous cycle where you're getting that and gaining market share and then feeding that funding back in to develop and improve your products to grow your market share again. And that's the path that we're on.
So, and there's also been much talk now of increased focus on Indigenous entrepreneurs by the Department of the Economy, and hopefully there's some stability to that policy. It doesn't chop and change with change of ministers, but that's something that wasn't necessarily evident. Is there any meat in those bones that now the
Well, I think that we still don't have that the sort of the Americans would say soup to nuts entrepreneurial encouragement culture. When I was at school and you were at school as well, I'm sure you suffered that. A lot of our education establishment focuses on wanting us to become professions.
Yeah,
Lawyers, doctors, safe jobs, which are not very entrepreneurial, and although they can form a good standard of living, they don't actually create and change the world a lot. When I did my PhD in physics, there was an opportunity I could have stayed on academic research, and I could have been creating innovations there. But it'd been difficult to make those innovations change the world. As an entrepreneur, you really have an opportunity to do that. But you need to have that sort of a sustained culture all the way through. And so you've got to help encourage people at schools to think about this as an opportunity. And some people it will suit, some people it won't. But you certainly want to be thinking about encouraging them all the way through. I was fortunate. My parents, oddly enough, were both civil servants, but they came from entrepreneurial families, and they were civil servants because that's the world they lived in at the time, and that was the kind of workplace they could get jobs. But they always encouraged me to be entrepreneurial and thinking. And I was also fortunate to spend time in an Irish Youth Science Week in Dublin, the RDS, and a speaker from the IDA basically told me that part of my Ireland's call was to go out and be an entrepreneur. So I came back at 16, told my schoolmates I was going to be an entrepreneur, and nobody knew how to spell it, but I knew that's my path.
You're saying 1 week at a science school changed your trajectory, yeah?
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting, because our dear friend Kieran Sheehan's Young Enterprise just lost £600,000 in funding. I think a year before last, he's battling on. And I always wonder about those cool camps, and we're involved in running some of those cool camps or tech camps and so on, and the Edu Day during Beltech. But they can really make a difference.
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. Okay.
So that set me on the path, and it's very clear. But like I say, on that path, then you want to sustain that. So you want to be able to ensure that there's good funding for startups, and there is reasonable opportunities there. There's Techstart and companies like that are providing funding for startups. But then you need to have sustainable funding to be able to, and then you need to look further afield. But even looking further afield is more difficult. We're fortunate that 57 Stars have a particular interest in investing in Northern Ireland, and but that's not always been the case. That we had scale up money, and we do need to invest in more scale up money. And too early and too often, many entrepreneurs in Northern Ireland sell out. In Ireland generally sell out too early, and they really should be encouraged to carry further. And I think part of that is again is the sort of environment and the culture of that. There's too many of the non-executive directors and people on the board and the government advisor people. They don't think about, you know, keeping that encouragement and sustaining the entrepreneurs to become really big companies and become unicorns. They're too quick to help sell out and capitalize and make some money, which in the short term is not best for Ireland as a whole, and it's not best for the individuals. I think there's an opportunity that they could be supported further and grow to be bigger, better companies.
And it's not for you to say, but I can say, in my view, once Andor left local ownership, there was no chance they're going to employ more people on that beautiful site they have in West Belfast. You don't need to comment on that, but that's my view. But let me, you would like Cirdan to be a unicorn?
Yes.
Okay.
It's got the legs to be at least, you know, way bigger than Andor, and it's got market opportunities marked in the billions. And I think there's the technology we're bringing forward and the developments and the changes we're making. The next 5 years will grow to a very, very huge and very successful company.
I don't want you to convert from it, but that you'd be happy if that was $1 billion or £1 billion.
I would be happy either. Yes.
I thought that. But look, listen, forward to seeing you on the 25th of March. Thank you for taking part in our small business roundtable. It's an early start. It starts at 8 o'clock, finishes at 9.
I start early. I've staff in Australia. We normally start at 6 or 6:30, so that's not a problem.
Fantastic. But listen, we're great.
Just for the record, by the way, my family came from the Glen Road the corner of Glen Road and Arizona Street. And I lived for a while in Grantia Crescent, and my grandmother, and she lived for years and years in Grantia Green. So we come from Grantia. So.
And how did you end up in Newry?
My father worked in the civil service, and it just wasn't sustainable the work in Belfast. So he ended up getting posted in Newry, and we all moved to Newry when I was 10. And so, because it was my formative years, I talk about being in Newry, and consequently, then I support Down for football and Antrim for hurling, which, you know, is to the chagrin of both my Antrim and Down friends.
Well, listen, we're big fans of Cirdan and of Hugh Cormican, so we wish you well and looking forward to seeing you on the 25th. Hugh, thanks a million.